The first thing I saw was the beige. Not the HOA-mandated morning dove beige of our siding, or the slightly darker toasted almond beige of our trim. No, this was a specific, aggressive, boat-sized slab of smug satisfaction beige. It was Brenda's Lincoln town car, and it was parked perfectly perpendicular to the end of our driveway, a landlocked battleship blockading the tiny harbor of our two-car garage. My hand holding the keys to our very unluxurious Honda Civic froze halfway to my pocket. Beside me, Chloe, my very pregnant, very beautiful, and very much on a schedule wife, let out a small gasp. "Leo, what is she doing?" On the roof of the Lincoln, a large, professionally laminated sign was perched like a crown. In a severe, joyless font, it read, "Official HOA notice, no commercial vehicle access, 8:09 a.m., per section, 7, subsection B." The low, guttural rumble of the 10-ton concrete mixer truck, idling impatiently on the street behind the Lincoln, suddenly seemed very, very loud. It was 8:58 a.m. In 2 minutes, its services would officially be in violation of Brenda's personal interpretation of the Magna Carta. In 32 minutes, Chloe had a vital, non-negotiable appointment with her specialist across town. I looked from the car to the source of all this misery. There she was, Brenda, Queen of the Cul-de-sac, president of the Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association, sitting in a rocking chair on her porch. She held a mug in her hand and a universe of self-satisfaction on her face. She was watching us. She had planned this. This was her masterpiece, her Sistine Chapel of Petty. My blood pressure, already on high alert thanks to impending fatherhood, began a journey to the stratosphere. "She's not doing anything, honey," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "She's achieved something. This is her D-Day." To understand the sheer, weaponized pettiness of that beige blockade, you have to understand life in Maple Creek Estates. We bought the house 3 years ago. It was a nice, quiet suburb, the kind of place with manicured lawns and identical mailboxes where you could raise a kid. What the realtor failed to mention was that it wasn't a neighborhood, it was a monarchy, and we were all the serfs of Queen Brenda. Brenda lived on a diet of regulations and the misery of others. She had won the HOA presidency by a single, dubious vote after the other candidate, a lovely retired gentleman named Mr. Henderson, suddenly had his prize-winning roses declared a non-native invasive species and was threatened with fines steep enough to fund a small nation's space program. From that day on, her rule was absolute. Her reign was a tapestry of tyranny woven with the threads of absurdity. There was the great wind chime incident of last summer, where the Miller family was fined $25 a day for their unapproved auditory decorations. Brenda claimed in the official notice that their gentle tinkling was disrupting the natural soundscape, which as far as I could tell consisted of lawnmowers and distant sirens. Then there was Trash Can Gate, a bylaw she single-handedly pushed through that decreed trash and recycling bins could only be visible from the street for a maximum of 45 minutes, pre- and post-pickup. It turned every Thursday morning into a frantic neighborhood-wide scramble, a suburban version of the Running of the Bulls, only with more recycling. My personal favorite was the Flamingo War of 24. Some college kid renting a room down the street put a single, ironic pink plastic flamingo on his lawn. Brenda treated it like a declaration of war. She wrote letters. She made calls. She claimed in an emergency HOA meeting that the flamingo lowered the collective property value and was a known attractant for undesirable elements, a phrase she delivered with the gravity of a seasoned Cold War diplomat. So, when Chloe and I found out we were expecting, our joy was tempered by a single, chilling thought. How do we baby-proof a house against Brenda? Our first problem was space. The spare room was the size of a walk-in closet. A nursery in there would feel less like a cozy haven and more like a minimalist prison cell. That's when the grand plan was born. Operation Baby Bunker. We would convert our attached garage into a proper master suite for us, and our current, much larger bedroom would become the ultimate nursery and playroom. It was a brilliant, elegant solution that involved architects, permits, and a whole lot of money. And most terrifyingly, it involved the HOA. We spent weeks preparing our proposal. We hired an architect who specialized in making exciting projects look as boring as humanly possible for approval boards. The exterior changes were minimal, one window in place of the garage door, and would, of course, utilize only pre-approved shades of beige and taupe. Our final submission to the HOA was a 30-page document complete with material samples, contractor licenses, city permits, and a projected timeline that emphasized minimal disruption to the community's aesthetic and auditory harmony. The HOA meeting was like defending a doctoral thesis to a panel of particularly dull gargoyles. Brenda and her two loyal cronies, a perpetually confused man named Gary and a woman named Susan, whose only personality trait was agreeing with Brenda, scrutinized every page. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," Brenda had said, peering over her glasses, "while we appreciate your ambition, this is an unprecedented level of construction. What about the noise?" "We've hired a highly professional, city-licensed crew who will only work within the legally permitted hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays," I'd replied, my voice smooth as butter. Gary chimed in, his brow furrowed. "But what about the character of the neighborhood?" "Gary," I'd said, resisting the urge to bang my head on the table, "we are changing the inside of a garage. The only character it currently has is sad place where spiders go to die. We feel a bedroom is a substantial improvement." It was Chloe who sealed the deal. She put a hand on her belly, looked at the board with wide, innocent eyes, and delivered the kill shot. "We just want a safe, comfortable space for our new baby," she'd said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "We've done everything by the book to ensure it respects all the community guidelines." Checkmate. They couldn't find a single, solitary rule in their sacred covenants to block it. They approved it, but the look on Brenda's face was not one of defeat. It was a promise of a long, beige and bitter war. Which brought me back to the driveway, back to the Lincoln, the concrete truck, and the ticking clock. The war had just gone nuclear. The first shot had been fired a week earlier, the day I met Sal. Sal was our contractor, a big, no-nonsense guy in his late 40s with a perpetually peeling nose and a laugh that seemed to start somewhere in his steel-toed boots. He strode onto our lawn with a confidence that was utterly alien to Maple Creek Estates. "All right, Leo," he'd boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "My guys will be here Monday, 8 a.m. sharp, to start demo on the garage door and frame the new wall. We'll have a small dumpster delivered tomorrow." "Sounds great," I said, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "Just a heads up. The HOA president, Brenda, she's vigilant." Sal let out that booming laugh. "Vigilant? Let me guess. Ruler for the grass height, color swatches for the mailbox, paint?" "You have no idea. She speaks in subsections. Her car is the exact color of HOA-approved taupe. She's like a Terminator, but instead of hunting Sarah Connor, she's hunting unapproved perennial flowers." "Don't you worry, kid," Sal chuckled, slapping a cloud of dust from his jeans. "I've handled worse. Had an HOA in Scottsdale try to fine my guys for having non-harmonious colored coolers. It was a whole thing. We just started bringing our lunches in beige paper bags. You gotta play the game." He wasn't wrong. The dumpster, a clean, regulation-sized receptacle, was delivered the next day and placed perfectly on the protective plywood we'd laid down on the driveway. It wasn't there for more than an hour before the first notice appeared, taped to our front door with an aggressive amount of Scotch tape. Violation: unapproved commercial receptacle on private property. $100 fine. I texted a picture of it to Sal. His reply came 2 seconds later. LOL. Tell her it's my beige-adjacent lawn art. I'll handle it. The ensuing confrontation was a sight to behold. I watched from the window as Sal, holding the violation notice like it was a winning lottery ticket, cheerfully intercepted Brenda on her afternoon patrol. He was a master. He calmly, politely explained that the dumpster was a legal and necessary component of a city-permitted construction site, the permit for which was, as she could plainly see, taped to the front window. He pointed out that the HOA covenants themselves deferred to city regulations on such matters. He called her ma'am so many times it began to sound like a 4-letter word. She couldn't argue. The rules, for once, were not on her side. She retreated, her face a tight mask of fury. It was a small victory, but it was like poking a hornet's nest with a very short stick. The siege had begun. That first week of construction was a masterclass in petty torment. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one delivered in a crisp white envelope with the HOA letterhead. On Monday at 8:05 a.m., 5 minutes after the crew started demolition, my phone rang. It was the city bylaw office. Sir, we've received a noise complaint from a Brenda Gable at your location? The city official sounded so tired. I politely explained we were a permitted construction site operating within legal hours. Yeah, that's what I figured, he sighed. This is the 3rd time this month from her. You're good. Have a nice day. On Tuesday, Brenda left a passive-aggressive note on one of the contractor's trucks. It was about a microscopic oil drip on the street, smaller than a quarter. She had not only noted the drip, but had included, for evidentiary purposes, a Ziploc bag containing a sample of the stained asphalt, which I assume she had scraped up with a garden trowel. Sal's foreman, a mountain of a man named Hector, found this so hilarious that he taped the note and the baggie to the inside of his truck's cab like a trophy. Wednesday was the day of the decibel meter. I watched from my home office window as Brenda stood on the edge of her lawn, phone held aloft, trying to get a reading on the crew's activity. The beautiful irony was that they were on their lunch break. The only sounds were the chirping of birds and Brenda's own furious muttering. But Thursday was her magnum opus. She submitted a formal 3-page complaint, complete with photographic evidence taken from her breakfast nook, that the crew's portable toilet was aesthetically displeasing. She argued that its vibrant blue color was a visual pollutant that ruined the carefully curated sightlines of the cul-de-sac. She demanded its immediate removal. Sal's response to this, which he forwarded to me, was a single sentence. The toilet stays unless the HOA is willing to provide alternative, conveniently located restroom facilities for my crew. Brenda did not respond. I was starting to lose it. My internal monologue, usually a fairly calm stream of sarcastic observations, was turning into a full-blown torrent of rage. Dad, she's a supervillain whose only power is making you read bylaws, I ranted on the phone that night. Her weakness is joy. I saw a kid's ball roll onto her lawn yesterday, and she looked at it like it was a live grenade. Son, you just have to ignore her, my dad said, his voice the usual calm baritone. People like that. They feed on attention. Don't give her the satisfaction. Ignore her? Dad, she's trying to get a porta-potty declared a public nuisance. I'm pretty sure she's building a binder on us. I'm not going down because of a blue chemical toilet. This is America. The night before the blockade was tense. The air in the house was thick with a mixture of drywall dust and anxiety. 2 massive events were converging on the following morning. Chloe's 29-week prenatal appointment with the high-risk specialist, and the 9 a.m. concrete pour for the new foundation. One was about the future of our family. The other was a logistical and financial linchpin for the renovation. Both were immovable. Chloe was quiet at dinner, pushing her food around her plate. "I just have a bad feeling, Leo," she said softly. "She's been quiet since the toilet thing. It's too quiet." "Hey," I said, taking her hand. It felt small and warm in mine. "Don't worry about her. I will not let that woman ruin our day. Tomorrow is about seeing our son on a screen and making sure he's healthy. That's it. Nothing else matters." I meant it. As Chloe went to bed, I felt a switch flip in my brain. The rage and frustration of the past week began to cool, hardening into a sharp, clear resolve. My dad was wrong. You can't ignore a bully. You have to beat them. And Brenda's arena was the rule book. "Okay," I thought, cracking my knuckles as I sat down at my laptop. "You can't fight crazy with logic. But maybe, just maybe, you can fight it with a bigger, more official rulebook." The glow of the screen illuminated my face as I dove into the labyrinthine world of municipal and state law. I didn't search for HOA rules. I searched for city ordinances, state traffic codes. I typed in phrases like obstructing a private driveway, right-of-way, and, on a hunch, impeding access to emergency and medical services. And there it was. A little-known but beautifully clear state vehicle code about blocking ingress and egress. And another, even better one, about the specific illegality of preventing an individual from seeking time-sensitive medical care. It was beautiful. It was perfect. I copied the statute numbers into a note on my phone. I reread them 3 times. A slow, devious smile spread across my face. It wasn't a smile of humor. It was the smile of a general who had just found the enemy's hidden weakness. Checkmate, I thought, is a dish best served with a side of city ordinances, which brought me back to the present. 8:59 a.m. The concrete truck driver laid on his horn again, a long, mournful blast that echoed through the cul-de-sac. Sal had jogged over from the worksite, his face a thundercloud. "What the hell is this?" he growled, not to me, but to the universe at large. I walked calmly to the edge of my lawn, the grass still damp with morning dew. I didn't yell. I didn't run. I projected an aura of calm I was nowhere near feeling. Brenda watched me from her porch, that smug little smile playing on her lips. She thought she had won. She thought I would plead or argue about the time or get into a shouting match. She was expecting a peasant's revolt. She was not prepared for a tactical strike. "Brenda," I said, my voice even and clear enough to carry across the lawn. "You need to move your car, right now." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Leo," she said, taking a delicate sip from her mug. "The rules are very clear. No commercial deliveries before 9 a.m. It's for the peace and quiet of the community. That concrete truck is in violation." Sal stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Lady, it's 8:59 and 30 seconds. Are you kidding me? This is a city-permitted pour. You're costing my client thousands of dollars and throwing my entire schedule into chaos." "Rules don't have a grace period, sir," Brenda said, her voice dripping with condescension. "That sounds like a personal problem, not an HOA one." "Forget the truck, Brenda," I cut in, my voice dropping an octave. This was the moment. "My very pregnant wife and I have a time-sensitive prenatal appointment with a specialist. It's in half an hour, across town. You are blocking us from leaving our property to get medical care. Move the car." This was the part she had been waiting for. The personal plea. The moment she could hold our well-being in her hand and crush it. She finally looked directly at me, a cruel, triumphant glint in her eye. "An appointment? How unfortunate," she said. the fake sympathy in her voice making my skin crawl. "I'm sure they'll understand if you're a little late. Maybe you should have planned your day better, factoring in our community's bylaws." That was it. That was the line. Chloe, standing by the front door, let out a tiny, wounded sound. In my head, 1,000 angry curses screamed for release, but on the outside, I was a statue. I gave Chloe a quick, reassuring nod. Then, slowly, deliberately, I pulled out my phone. My internal monologue was sharp and clear. "Okay, Brenda. You wanted to play by the rules. Let's play by all of them." Brenda's smirk widened as she saw my phone. She thought I was taking a picture, or maybe calling the HOA to complain about her, which would be like calling the Emperor to complain about Darth Vader. She leaned back in her rocking chair, ready to enjoy the show. I didn't take a picture. I didn't yell. I navigated to my phone's keypad and dialed the 10-digit non-emergency number for the city police department. And just for her, for Sal, for the concrete driver, and for the neighbors now peeking through their blinds, I hit the speakerphone button. The dial tone echoed in the suddenly silent cul-de-sac. A calm, professional voice answered on the second ring. "City Police, what's your non-emergency?" I took a breath. "Showtime." "Yes, hello?" I said, and my voice the perfect blend of concerned citizen and articulate victim. "My name is Leo Thompson, and I'm at 124 Maple Drive. I need to report a case of unlawful detainment and the deliberate obstruction of access to medical care." The silence that followed my statement was profound. The word detainment hung in the air like a puff of smoke. On the porch, Brenda's rocking chair creaked to a halt. Her smirk had vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion. The dispatcher's voice was instantly more alert. "Sir, can you explain exactly what's happening?" "Certainly," I continued, my eyes locked on Brenda. "My pregnant wife and I are being held against our will on our own property. A neighbor, a Miss Brenda Gable, has used her vehicle to completely barricade our driveway, preventing us from leaving for a time-sensitive, critical prenatal appointment with a medical specialist." I could see Sal's eyes widen. He took a half step back, a slow grin of dawning comprehension spreading across his face. The dispatcher asked, "She's physically blocking your car in right now?" "Correct. We have asked her to move her vehicle, and she has explicitly refused. She has stated she is doing so under the guise of an HOA rule, but her actions are now violating State Vehicle Code 22500 regarding illegal parking and obstruction of a right-of-way." More seriously, I paused for emphasis, letting the words land with the weight they deserved. They are preventing a pregnant woman from receiving necessary and time-sensitive medical attention. We are on a strict schedule with the doctor's office. Every minute counts. Brenda was now on her feet. The confusion had morphed into panic. Her face, usually a healthy shade of beige outrage, was turning a pale, sickly white. She was realizing, far too late, that the game had changed, and she didn't know the rules anymore. "Okay, sir," the dispatcher said, a new urgency in her tone. "Is the person who is blocking you in still on the scene?" "Yes, she is," I said, never breaking eye contact with Brenda. "She is standing on her porch at 128 Maple Drive, watching us right now. The vehicle is a beige Lincoln Town Car, license plate." I read it off loud and clear. "Understood. We are dispatching an officer immediately. Please remain on the line, sir." The entire phone call took less than 2 minutes. As I said, "Thank you," and disconnected, the silence rushed back in. But it was a different kind of silence now. It was heavy with consequence. Brenda started stammering, her voice high and reedy. "Now, see here. That was uncalled for. This is an HOA matter, and you have no right—" But her words had no power. They were just the panicked squeaks of a tyrant who had just witnessed a revolution she didn't even know was being planned. It wasn't 90 seconds. It was more like 70. Far down the street, a flash of blue and red appeared, then another. Then the rising wail of a siren cutting through the morning air. A police cruiser, moving with purpose, turned onto our street. It was glorious. It was the cavalry. The cruiser pulled up and parked, its lights painting dancing strobes across the beige houses. 2 officers emerged. One was a younger female officer, sharp and alert. The other was an older, weary-looking man with a thick mustache and an expression that said he had seen every possible form of human stupidity and was rarely surprised anymore. He was Officer Miller, and he was my new hero. He approached me first, his eyes taking in the whole ridiculous scene. The Lincoln, the concrete truck, Sal's bewildered crew, Chloe standing anxiously by our door, and Brenda, who was now wringing her hands on her porch. "Morning," Officer Miller said, his voice a gravelly calm. "What seems to be the problem here?" I explained the situation calmly and concisely, showing him the appointment reminder on my phone. He listened, nodding slowly, his gaze drifting over to the beige Lincoln. He then turned and walked with a slow, deliberate pace onto Brenda's lawn. "Ma'am," he said, his voice polite but firm. "Is this your vehicle?" Brenda, suddenly finding a burst of self-righteousness, puffed out her chest. "Yes, it is, officer, and I'm glad you're here. This man," she pointed a trembling finger at me, "is violating HOA rules. That commercial vehicle is not permitted before 9 a.m. Officer Miller held up a hand, a gesture that was both patient and utterly dismissive. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I am not an HOA enforcer. I am a police officer. Right now, your vehicle is illegally obstructing a public right-of-way. It is also, as I understand it, preventing these people from attending a legitimate medical appointment." He let that hang in the air for a moment. That can be considered reckless endangerment in certain circumstances. Are you aware of that? Brenda's jaw worked, but no sound came out. The words reckless endangerment seemed to have short-circuited her brain. I was just upholding the covenants," she finally sputtered. "You are going to move this car right now," Officer Miller said, his voice losing its patient edge. "Or I am going to have it towed and impounded at your expense. Then I am going to write you a series of very expensive tickets for every violation I can find. We can also, if you'd prefer, continue this conversation about unlawful imprisonment down at the station. The choice is entirely yours." It was a total, unconditional surrender. Utterly defeated, Brenda scrambled for her keys, her face a mask of humiliation. Sal's entire crew had stopped working just to watch the show. As Brenda fumbled to get the Lincoln started, Hector, the foreman, let out a low whistle of appreciation. A few of the other guys were openly laughing. As the beige battleship of tyranny finally pulled away, clearing our path, Officer Miller turned back to me. A tiny glimmer of a smile touched the corner of his mustache. "Looks like you folks are going to be late," he said. He then gestured to his cruiser. "Follow us. We'll clear a path for you." My jaw dropped. He wasn't joking. The cruiser pulled in front of our little Honda Civic, hit the lights and a short burst from the siren, and proceeded to give us a full police escort off our street and through the first 3 traffic lights. Chloe and I sat in stunned, glorious silence for a moment, trailing a cop car like we were in the middle of a high-speed chase. We finally looked at each other. The tension of the last week and the sheer absurdity of the moment breaking over us. We burst out laughing. It was the best sound I had ever heard. We made the appointment with 5 minutes to spare. The ultrasound was perfect. Our son was healthy, active, and according to the doctor, had very long legs. When we returned home hours later, the world was different. The concrete foundation for our new room was poured and perfectly smoothed, a testament to Sal's crew getting back to work with a vengeance. Sal was packing up his truck and gave me a hearty slap on the back. "Kid," he said, a huge grin on his face. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen on a job site. You're a legend." Brenda's house was dark. All the curtains were drawn. The beige Lincoln was hidden away in her garage, as if in shame. We never received another violation notice. Not for the construction, not for the new window, not for anything. The war was over. We had won. 6 months later, I was standing in our beautiful, finished nursery. The walls painted a soft, gentle, and decidedly not beige blue. In my arms, I held my son, Leo Jr., who was sleeping soundly. I looked out the window at the peaceful cul-de-sac. Down the street, Brenda was getting her mail. She saw me in the window, and for a split second, our eyes met. She flinched and hurried back inside. They say you can't fight City Hall, but sometimes if you know the right rules, you can get City Hall to fight for you. And, as it turns out, the only thing more powerful than an HOA Karen with a rule book is a desperate father-to-be with a smartphone and a very, very important appointment.